Today we're discussing the idea of fear because we live in very uncertain times, times that are really fearful. There's so many changes, so much upheaval. There's so many things going on that we really don't know exactly what's going to be the outcome. Always around election, anyways. There's a lot of fear, but it seems like it's escalating every cycle. But that who knows? We live in such a time that all the things going on, whether it's actually the political schemes, whether it's the national crisis of economy, whether it's the worldwide COVID, we're all kind of living in a state of kind of suspense and wondering what's going to happen next. I mean, 2020 has been the year that it just seems like we're getting pounded again and again. And as we discuss fear, it's one of those things that I think we've come to accept fear as if that's just part of life. We're just supposed to be afraid, even though we're told not to fear, even though we're told not to be anxious. I think we as believers have come to the place of accepting fear as almost a way to show our concern and our care for the things around us. And we don't even look at why we're afraid, what we're afraid of, and yet we equate it with caring. We equate it with virtue almost. And we have to really be aware of that because it's a very negative emotion, obviously, and no one necessarily enjoys fear. We enjoy the control over fear. People like having thrill rides and scary movies and things like that because there feels like I've got a little control over that. So we enjoy control of fear, but we don't really like actually being afraid, actually feeling like we're in that uncertain danger. Where does that come from? Well, Proverbs 28:1 gives us a clue, which says, "The wicked man flees, though no one pursues." Oftentimes we're paranoid, we live in suspense, we're distressed, we're anxious, we're all these things because at the core of it, we know we're sinful. At the core of it, we know we deserve punishment. We know that we should be getting bad things in our life because we've done bad things. And that is everybody. Every human being has sinned. Every human being has done wrong. Every human being has done evil things towards other people, to where we almost kind of live in that suspense of when are my sins going to revisit my head? When is it gonna, when is the day of reckoning? When does the toll come due? And we fear that, and so we start to fear the loss. We fear the consequences of what we've done, what we're hiding in our hearts. And so we live in this constant fear, and yet God tells us not to be afraid. And it's like, but that is life. And so then we try to scope it around, like I said, to where we almost make it a virtue because that means I care. Well, what do we care about, though? We try to say, well, I care about the country, I care about people, I care about the environment, I care about equal rights, I care about, we care about all kinds of things that we want to have happen. And a lot of those things are good. A lot of those things should be advocated for and worked towards and really put a lot of effort into. And yet, that's not what really makes us afraid, especially we as believers. If we were really honest, we're not afraid because we care about things or even people. We're afraid because we care about ourselves. It's what we desire. It's what we think is best. We want to justify ourselves and make ourselves upright, that I am the one who really knows. I am the one who's right. As if there's almost this court coming, a court case coming. And so, social media to letters to the senators to discussion at work to everything. We're trying to constantly prove ourselves right rather than actually admitting to the fact that, no, I'm wrong. I'm a mess. I got issues galore. We tend to try to defend ourselves, and in defending ourselves, we think maybe we'll make a case, and yet in the end, we still know I got problems. I got issues. And that's why we flee when no one is even pursuing us, even though there's all kinds of slander, all kinds of general accusations going out from one perspective to another, from one agenda to another. There's things going back and forth, and yet we're all afraid. What's going to happen if this person's elected? What's going to happen if that thing? What's going to happen if this happens? What's going to happen if that? And we go down this line because we really anticipate bad things happening, and well, we should. This is a sinful world. This is a wicked world that deserves really destruction. But we as believers are not given over to God's wrath. So why are we afraid? Well, I don't want to live an unpleasant life, but also I know I'm really not living for the Lord. I'm still wicked in myself. I'm still living in such a way that deserves punishment, whether for eternity or just temporarily. I know I should get slaps on the head, but hopefully I'll get away with it. But times are getting tough. Maybe I'm not getting away with it. We don't think of it that way, but it's almost an innate response. It's almost something that is basically just our nature, that when things go bad, we're fearful it's directed at us, even if it's not happening to us, because we know it should happen to us. And that's why so often when bad things happen to others, we find reasons to justify why it should happen to them. Yeah, you should be in prison. You should be attacked. You should be shot. You should be this. And we go down that line because if we can justify why it happens to them, we're still trying to justify why it didn't happen to us, why it shouldn't happen to us, because what if I'm next? What if that stray bad thing happens to me? Well, it shouldn't. And so, again, we're fearful because we feel like we're pursued constantly harassed. Whereas the second part of Proverbs 28 actually gives us a clue when it says, the wicked flee, though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Being an apex predator, you look at the, nature videos and things like that, and you see how like the male lion just doesn't care. It eats and devours, but I mean, it does not seem too afraid when it's in its own pride and it's in its own territory. And even when it roars, if you've ever watched those videos, a lot of times those lions look totally bored, as if they're like, I shouldn't even say bored, I should say relaxed. You think about even other apex creatures like crocodiles, you would think, they would be the killers. But you got hippos, that the hippos walk through piles of crocodiles. Even baby hippos walk through piles of them. Not because they're arrogant or, I'm the boss and I'm going to. They just know. They're bold. They don't have to be afraid. They literally, hippos are just so huge and so dangerous. They don't have to be afraid even of crocodiles. Crocodiles move out of hippos' ways. We, as believers, should be as bold as a lion, because we, not in ourselves, not in our goodness, not in our efforts, but in Christ, He has made us the righteousness of God. But we don't live like that, and so we don't have that confidence. As Hebrews 10 says, those who deliberately keep on sinning only have a fearful expectation of punishment, because punishment has to do with fear, or fear has to do with punishment from 1 John. We still live our lives as if we're on our own, as if we have to do things our way, and as if our way is the best way, and so we still try to justify it. Well, that makes us afraid. But the more we actually do things God's way, I mean, talk to God genuinely, talk to others genuinely, open our hearts, confess, renounce our sins, we think biblically, and we act biblically in earnest, those are people who are bold. They don't have to defend themselves. They don't have to feel like the court of judgment is hanging over their heads, because they're confident of God's grace. They're confident not in their own righteousness, but rather in the work of God in them, that they don't have to be afraid of being thrown in jail. They don't have to be afraid of being persecuted. They don't have to be afraid of losing their house or losing their life or health, because those things could happen. Those things will happen to some, but they don't have to be afraid of it, because I'm in the Lord's hands. I am the Lord's, and I live for the Lord, I die for the Lord. And if I perish, I perish. Even though He slay me, I will still hope in Him. That is the mindset of the righteous, those who have the grace of God working in them. But that is not afforded just to believers, just as a general thing, like, all believers just have confidence. No, that's to the believers who listen to the word, do what it says, and they have peace in whatever they do. They have confidence in the Lord. They have confidence that He is with them. They don't have to fear every conspiracy. They don't have to fear all the things going on. Rather, they just continue to do good and trust the Lord to make their cause shine like the noonday sun. That is the life of those who not only believe in the Lord, but believe in the Lord that faith produces obedience, or faith that produces love. That's the person who has confidence. That's the person who has peace. But oftentimes we as believers don't have that peace because we're forsaking his ways. We're neglecting his word. We're thinking in worldly ways. And so we have fear. We have doubts. We have all kinds of uncertainties. Whereas if we know the Lord, if we trust the Lord, times may be uncertain. Our future is uncertain. But we know who is certain. And he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so we have peace. Those who really know the Lord, love the Lord, will have peace. Those whose minds are set on the Lord will have peace. So the question as you go into your discussion now is this: why do you have fear? Why do you have all kinds of stress? Why do you have all kinds of needs to make yourself justified rather than really just living for the Lord? How can we have confidence? How can we have peace? Hopefully the discussion questions that you'll find, whether in the description of this video or in the email, will at least point you to some other scriptures to help you discuss these things, to come to a place to where you realize, I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be afraid. In fact, fear is deceptive. And the more I know the truth sets me free. So hopefully this is a help. I pray it is. Love you guys. And hey, fear not.